To give the best speech of your life, you need to learn from the best. So I studied the 100 most viewed TED Talks on YouTube of all time to reveal the 5 key components that you should incorporate today in your next speech. I'm talking about speeches from Simon Sinek, Brené Brown, Amy Cuddy, and dozens of other thought leaders who've garnered over 2 billion views on YouTube. And once you see this pattern, you'll never watch a TED Talk the same way again. Hey there, I'm Preston Chin. I've helped hundreds of professionals around the world improve their public speaking and advance their careers. So if you want to improve your speaking skills, make sure to subscribe to the channel. So the first thing every top TED speaker does is grab attention with what I call the curiosity hook. But they don't use random attention grabbers. I've seen that many use one of 4 proven patterns that create what I call cognitive tension. Your brain literally cannot ignore the puzzle that the speaker has presented. Pattern 1 is the paradox question. Listen to how Simon Sinek opens his golden circle talk.
How do you explain when things don't go as we assume? Or better, how do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all of the assumptions?
Notice how he's not asking just any question. He's presenting a contradiction that makes your brain itch for an answer. The paradox is, why do some companies and leaders succeed when logic says they shouldn't? This immediately creates mental tension that pulls you in. Pattern 2 is the vulnerable confession. Here's Kelly McGonigal opening her talk about stress.
I have a confession to make. But first, I want you to make a little confession to me. In the past year, I want you to just raise your hand if you've experienced relatively little stress. Anyone?
Now, the word confession immediately signals that something personal and potentially surprising or shocking is coming. This vulnerability creates this instant intimacy with your audience and makes them lean forward because confessions reveal hidden truths. Pattern 3 is the dramatic scene. Here's Daniel Levitin painting a vivid picture for us in the very beginning of his speech.
A few years ago, I broke into my own house.
That opening line forces you to create a mental movie. You're immediately wondering why someone would break into their own home, which creates narrative tension that demands resolution. Pattern 4 is the startling statement. Here's Mel Robbins' opening.
Do you know that 1/3 of Americans feel dissatisfied with their lives right now? That is 100 million people. That's insane.
She drops a shocking statistic that forces you to process the magnitude of the problem. 100 million dissatisfied people isn't just a number, it's a crisis that might include you or someone you know. Now, after hooking attention, the top speakers don't just jump straight into the insights. Instead, they're gonna tell a story that builds empathy and puts you in their shoes. But they follow specific storytelling formulas that I'm gonna break down for you, focusing on internal conflict and emotional stakes. I want you to listen to how Brené Brown draws you into her vulnerability research journey.
So very quickly, really about 6 weeks into this research, I ran into this unnamed thing that absolutely unraveled connection in a way that I didn't understand or had never seen. And so I pulled back out of the research and thought, I need to figure out what this is. And it turned out to be shame.
Notice how she focuses on her internal confusion and struggle, not just the external facts of her research. She makes you feel her frustration at encountering something that didn't fit her expectations. This emotional journey is crucial because it makes her eventual breakthrough feel earned rather than just proclaimed. Here's another example from Amy Morin.
So I have a Facebook friend whose life seems perfect. She lives in a gorgeous house, and she has a really rewarding career. And she and her family go on all these exciting adventures together on the weekends. And I swear that they must take a professional photographer along with them because no matter where they go or what they do, the whole family just looks beautiful. And she's always posting about how blessed she is and how grateful she is for the life that she has. And I get the feeling she's not just saying those things for the sake of Facebook, but she truly means it. How many of you have a friend kind of like that? And how many of you kind of don't like that person sometimes?
Do you see how she creates immediate recognition and internal conflict? Which is, we've all felt that twinge of envy scrolling through social media. I mean, I have certainly felt that. And she makes that private shame feel universal and acceptable to discuss. This vulnerability creates connection before she even reveals her main point, because she's made it personal. Now, the storytelling formula that many TED speakers use is what I call scene, struggle, stakes. Scene is setting the specific moment. Struggle is revealing the internal conflict, and stakes shows why this matters to your audience emotionally. The speakers don't just tell you what happened. That's the key. They don't tell you what happened. They make you feel what it was like to be in their shoes during their moment of confusion or pain. So after building empathy through story, every top speaker that I've studied shares their moment of transformation. But here's the key. They don't just share what happened to them. They position their personal breakthrough as a universal insight that applies to everyone in their audience. Listen to how Simon Sinek transitions from his personal confusion to his universal discovery.
About 3.5 years ago, I made a discovery. And this discovery profoundly changed my view on how I thought the world worked, and it even profoundly changed the way in which I operate in it. As it turns out, there's a pattern.
He positions his insight as a discovery, something that was always there, waiting to be uncovered. Now, this makes it feel inevitable in hindsight, but surprising in the moment, because the phrase, as it turns out, suggests this truth applies to everyone, not just him. And here's Brené Brown's transformation moment.
And now my mission to control and predict had turned up the answer that the way to live is with vulnerability and to stop controlling and predicting. This led to a little breakdown.
Brené reveals the irony that her attempt to control research led to discovering she needed to give up control. Now, this paradox makes the insight more memorable, and this shows how personal breakthroughs often contradict our initial assumptions. Now, Johann Hari does this beautifully in his talk about depression.
But I was only able to start changing my life when I realized your depression is not a malfunction. It's a signal. Your depression is a signal. It's telling you something.
Notice how he shifts from my life to your depression. He takes this personal realization and makes it immediately about their audience. The repetition of "it's a signal" drives home the core reframe that depression isn't a flaw, but rather a message. Now, the pattern I've noticed tends to be before state, catalyst moment, and then after state, and then universal application. This structure makes the audience feel like they've been on the discovery journey with the speaker, so the insight feels more earned rather than imposed. Now, if you want to master these frameworks and learn how to organize your thoughts instantly whenever you're speaking in a high-stakes scenario, I'd strongly encourage you to check out my Impromptu Speakers Academy. It's my flagship program where I teach professionals exactly how to use these communication structures and frameworks to speak with confidence in any situation. The link is in the description below. Now, here's where top speakers then introduce their simple, memorable takeaway that everyone can apply. But they don't just present the information. That's the key. They're actually creating frameworks that stick in your mind long after the talk ends. But to demonstrate this, let me give you a few examples. For instance, you should keep your framework to 3 parts or less. Simon Sinek has his why, how, what framework. Amy Cuddy has high power, and low power poses. Tim Urban has 3 characters in his procrastination model. You could also use memorable names with visual metaphors. Listen to how Tim Urban brings his framework to life.
Well, turns out that the procrastinator has a guardian angel, someone who's always looking down on him and watching over him in his darkest moments, someone called the panic monster. Now, the panic monster is dormant most of the time, but he suddenly wakes up anytime a deadline gets too close or there's danger of public embarrassment, a career disaster, or some other scary consequence.
You see, the panic monster isn't just a concept, it's a character that you can visualize. And this metaphor makes the abstract idea of deadline pressure tangible and memorable to your audience. You can actually picture this monster waking up when you're facing a deadline. Or you can make your framework have a counterintuitive element that challenges conventional wisdom. Simon Sinek, for instance, starts by saying why, not what, which is opposite of how most companies communicate what they do. McGonagall says stress can be good for you, which is opposite of what most health psychology has taught us. Cuddy says, fake it till you become it, not the commonly used phrase, fake it till you make it. So this counterintuitive aspect is crucial because it forces your audience to reconsider their original assumptions before your talk, which makes the framework, the takeaway, the metaphor much more memorable and shareable for your audience. And then finally, top speakers end with a vision of the transformation for their audience. But instead of overwhelming you with a bunch of research, they focus on inspiring hope and giving you something concrete to act on. So here are 3 possible approaches that you can use when you're crafting your own transformation call for your audience. The first is to give people permission to change their perspective. I want you to listen to how Sam Burns reframes his challenges.
I don't waste energy feeling bad for myself. I surround myself with people that I want to be with, and I keep moving forward.
You see, he's not telling you to do anything complicated. He's simply giving you permission to stop wasting energy on self-pity and focus on what you can control. Now, this works really well because it validates that change is a choice, not a requirement for perfect circumstances. The second is to offer one simple action your audience can take immediately. Here's an example from Mel Robbins.
Tomorrow morning, set your alarm for 30 minutes earlier. And then when it goes off, take those sheets, throw them off, and stand up and start your day. No snooze, no delay.
I want you to notice how specific this is. She's not saying to be more disciplined, but rather something concrete, to set your alarm 30 minutes earlier tomorrow. When you give people one concrete step, they're far more likely to actually do it than if you give them a general rule of thumb or principle. So the key is to make the transformation feel both necessary and achievable. Don't overwhelm people with so many steps. Just give them one clear path forward, whether it's permission to think differently, a specific action to take, or a new lens to see through. Your transformation call should leave people feeling equipped rather than exhausted. So this 5-part formula, the hook, the story, the discovery, the framework, the transformation, works because it mirrors how humans naturally process trust, learning, and action. You see, the first 3 parts of that 5-part formula build emotional investment for your audience. And the last 2 provide practical value and lasting motivation. But what I've seen far too often is that most speakers make the fatal mistake of leading with their framework or jumping straight into the evidence or research. But the insights without emotional investment feel like lectures. When you felt the speaker's struggle, the speaker's confusion, their breakthrough, that all becomes your breakthrough. Now, if you want to go deeper on frameworks just like these and learn how to speak brilliantly in high-stakes scenarios, Check out my Impromptu Speakers Academy. And to see more breakdowns of how the top communicators structure their messages, watch this video right here where I analyze exactly how executives sound intelligent off the cuff.